Welcome to the Epcot International Festival of the Arts. Whether it's painting, carving, aromatherapy, or napkin folding, everyone has a creative, artistic side. Get ready to enjoy our next presenter and creative seminar.
Hello everyone, can you hear me? Woo. My name is Lynn Rippberger. I'm going to take my gloves off, it's a little warm up here. I am a Disney animation ink and paint artist. I've been with Disney since '86. I started in feature animation in 1989, so it was a long time ago. I came on board with Disney through an internship program through my college, and I was fortunate enough to get on board through that internship, and they were working on Little Mermaid at the time, so I had the privilege of doing cel animation to start. My background is computer animation, graphic design, technology, and illustration. That's a title. So I range from one spectrum to the other. I do traditional art and I also do digital art. What we're going to talk about today a little bit is cel animation and cel art. I've had the privilege of working with Disney Animation on several films, starting with The Little Mermaid, and that was cel animation, and we did some shorts with Roger Rabbit, which was a lot of fun, and those were cel animations as well. And then we started to transition and evolve into the digital world, and we went into Little Rescuers Down Under, and we were doing the digital ink and paint. A lot of people thought, oh my goodness, you're going to lose your jobs, and not so. What happens is we traded a paintbrush for a stylus pen. So the technique and the process of animation, making an animated film, was the same. There were some different things, of course, because it's in the digital world, but we literally still inked and painted one cel at a time. And that was a privilege. I was able to work there until 2004, so had the privilege of working on a little bit of Beauty and the Beast. We did some Lion King in Florida, and then we did our own film, Mulan, which was awesome. I don't know if you have seen that, but it was a beautiful film, and it was created here in Florida. And then we went on to Lilo and Stitch, and then Brother Bear, like Lilo and Stitch, yeah. And then Brother Bear, which was our last 2D film here in Florida. After that, the studio kind of closed here because, as you know, as you see now, the parks are evolving into a new stage. And it will continue to do that to just bring more good entertainment for all of us. Once the studio merged into California, we didn't have it here, so all of our animators and artists, they kind of spread out, which was really a good thing. I always believe that when one door closes, another one opens, because now the next generation is learning from those animators and artists that were doing that traditional animation. So they're teaching all over Orlando. Some have moved to different parts of the country, so we're a little bit everywhere. What I did is I took a little time off, started a fine art school for children so we could do music and arts, and then I came on board with this team in 2007, where we do only limited edition traditional art, which is what we're going to talk about today. And let's see. We're going to, I'm going to show you a little bit about the different forms of cel animation. We do those in the parks. We have a team that's backstage. We were on stage, but as I said, things evolved. So we're backstage right now, just working away. We started out with 8, and we're down to about 3 right now. And so we're dwindling down a little bit, but the digital world is helping us to grow. We do have more chances to work on digital backgrounds and painting backgrounds to work with cel animation. I'll tell you a little bit about that. So today, I've got control of the PowerPoint. I gave you a copy of 2 things actually. One is actually what they call a color model sheet that we always give to an artist when they're doing cell animation or any type of limited edition, so we can see how it's going to be painted. And today is a lecture, so you're not going to have that opportunity, but please come back because we do have some workshops available. So you can actually try your hand at doing cell painting. On the back, you'll see these codes and numbers, and this gives us an idea where the colors go. Because as an artist, we're going to get creative, and we can't with a limited edition, especially because the limited edition, every piece is the same throughout the edition. The second piece that I gave you is part of the presentation you'll see on the PowerPoint. I wanted you to take this away with you, though. So for those of you who love cels, love cell animation, it'll be a great opportunity for you when you want to collect to know what you're collecting, because it's very tricky out there because we have the secondary market online and you can't touch it and feel it and know what you're buying. So I'm going to help educate you a little bit with that, so we'll be able to start on that. Okay, the three types of animation that we have are production cels, limited edition and reproduction, and cels and serigraph. And I know you've probably all heard about at least one of those, right? Okay, and you probably own some too, because it's hard not to. They're so beautiful. Just to be quick about what a cel is, I brought one. This is a cel. I want to separate it from the paper. So it's a clear acetate piece of transparency called celluloid acetate. And this is created for the animator's drawing to go underneath it. And then we put the images on the top and paint on the back. And I'm going to go a little bit more in detail with that. But this is the traditional way of doing cell animation in two-dimensional without the digital world. With Little Mermaid, for instance, it was a 2D animated film, and the same with Beauty and the Beast. But the difference is Little Mermaid didn't use cels, and Beauty and the Beast did not. We painted them digitally, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So let's break this down so you can help you understand it a little bit. Let me get this up water. So production cels. Production cels are just as they are. They're used in a production. An animated film, a cartoon short, anything where a studio artist creates it and uses it for commercial use. We did some cell animation for a commercial, and that was a lot of fun. And it was with cels, and we did one by one. And those cels, usually for every animator drawing, there's a cel, and that's 24 per second. So you can imagine how many cels are used in Little Mermaid, for instance, millions. It was quite a few of them. And just think of all the films before when they were doing cell animation, back in the 30s and 40s. I could tell you stories about Snow White. A lot of times, it was in a depression, so they used to wipe the images away and take the paint off of the cel so they could reuse it. It was just hard times, but they managed to get it through. We got a beautiful film out of it. Let's talk about the technique of a production cel. Okay, the image is placed onto the front of the cel, and the reason we put the image on the front and we paint it on the back. I'll show you how to do that. This is the image, and it's placed on the front. The reason we do that is because we flip it over and we paint it on the back, so we don't interfere with any of that line. Let's say we accidentally give Mickey a red ear, which we try never to do, we give him black ears. We would have to remove that paint. If we were removing the paint, we'd be removing the line. So all of the detail line is placed on the front. So films like Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, and all the earlier films, the inker would actually get the animator's drawing, and she'd put it on her board and put the cel on top of it. Something like this. I'm using the example of the cel I have up here. So let's pretend this is an animator's drawing. The inker would put the cell on top, and these would be, they have peg holes. It's all, set up for camera use. The ink would actually trace over the drawing very carefully, not to reanimate it, because the animator has a specific way that he wants the scene to look. And if the inker goes in and she says, well, I'm going to alter his ear a little bit, then it could change the whole scene. So the inker was very precise. And what she was tracing over is the cleanup artist work, which is really exciting when you think about it. For a cleanup artist, when you're at the movie theater and you're seeing those characters that are on the screen, that's their work, because the animator has a team of people that works with them, the animator, and then he has an in-betweener that actually moves the image and makes the illusion of movement, and then the cleanup artist takes the drawing and cleans it up. And that's what we would get as an ink and paint department. So in 101 Dalmatians, in the early 60s, Disney just incorporated the xerography. And I know you've probably all heard about that. And that saved us tons of time. Can you imagine hand inking all those little doggies in 101 Dalmatians? It would make me crazy. I wouldn't sleep at night. So what that does is it was a process of xerography, kind of like a Xerox machine, where it would transfer the image from the paper to the clear cell. So then the image would be placed on the front. Of course, later we came up with silk screening, which is what we know today. On xerography, which was great for 101, we were able to do it, but if you notice when you watch it now, it is black line, because we were very, very limited on the line color. By the time we got to Little Mermaid, we had 5 colors. That's not very many to do a line on a character. I can't imagine Ariel having a really black line in her animation. So we used a brown line for her. We did still do what they called ink enhancements, and those are where we take a quill pen, and I have one right here. It's an old-time quill pen, like a fountain pen. Can you see that? And we would dip it into the paint. Of course, it was a watered-down paint to get the consistency of India ink. And this is what we would trace those lines. We would use it for effects, because we were using the Xerox to get the main character line. But let's say we wanted the bubbles when she was under the sea. So we don't want those in brown or black, and certainly not blue or red. And then there were white lines, but we wanted them a light blue. We had control of that because we could still ink on the front. And that's what we do when we were doing ink enhancements. So as you can see on the slide, all those bubbles that are going on there, it made it more realistic, and it made them actually pop off the cell a little bit more, because you've got to remember the painting is being done on the back and the detail is on the front. Before I move on, when we went into digital inking and painting, the colors were infinite. When we were mixing color for Little Mermaid and we were painting with cell paint, like I'm using here, these colors are specially mixed. It's cell vinyl paint. It helps to adhere to the cell, because the cell is very flexible. It moves a lot, and we don't want it to crack, but it dries very, very flat. You can see I'm kind of halfway through his pants there. But when we would mix colors, we worked on Roger Rabbit, a film with Roger Rabbit, Tummy Trouble, and we did Roller Coaster Rabbit. I don't know if y'all remember those, but they were really fun little shorts. If we didn't mix a lot of color, it was very difficult from scene to scene to match that. And there's no recipe card for it. We actually had to do it by eye. So it was really, really important to mix a large quantity of it. So we use base colors. That helps, because there's no pigments in the paint when they're a base color. When you start getting like red-brown or gray-red, those have other pigments in it to make it that color. So it's nice to have the digital, so that was a plus for us. And there was no dry time, and it opened up a lot of opportunities to use more colors. The next one I want to talk about is the limited edition reproduction cell. Now, reproduction and limited editions are some of the ones that I have on the stage here. The limited editions are what we do in our collection. We actually ink and paint the cell, like I was doing here when we first walked in. And those are specifically used for collectors, made for collectors. We don't use those for film. They are limited to a number. So there's usually, we started out at 1,200. We're doing 4 a year, and now the edition sizes are 300. So it's gone down a lot, which is great for collectability as well. Reproductions are basically the same thing, except a lot of times reproductions you can find original backgrounds with. Of course, let's say we want to do a reproduction from Beauty and the Beast. Well, we were painting them digitally then. We don't have cels to go with the original background. The backgrounds were still being painted, and they still are today. But so we would have to reproduce a cell to go with that background. And those are, they're on the higher end of the market because it's a production background, but not a production cell. So those are the limited editions. And these are some of the moments I wanted to talk a little bit about some more of that technique. We use the same materials that we used when we were making animated films. We would use the cell material, which I showed you here. We would start with a drawing. This one, the first one that I have there is Mickey and Walt, or Walk and Mickey is what it's called, Walt and Mickey. We start with the design. We have a great team called the design team, a Disney design group, and they're making some changes as well, so they're evolving into other fields as well. They do a lot of the beautiful merchandise that you see out in the parks. And some of the artists are here at this event as well. But they work closely with us to make sure the characters stay, the integrity of the character is kept, because each individual artist could change, can alter that a little bit because we get creative when we start going in another direction. But we start with an image, a concept, as we do with most art. This image is, we used to hand ink them on a cell to get a really fine line so we can send it to the printer to be silk screened. But now what we do is we go into a program, Illustrator. A lot of people have loved that program, and we can get some really great lines for printing. And then once this is printed onto the cell, they get the cells, they cut them down, they get the image, place it on here, and we end up with the one I showed you earlier, which is Mickey. So now we have a ready cell to be painted. So the ink and paint artist would take the cell, they would flip it over. You can always tell by the heading that it's backwards, which is good to do because sometimes we do accidentally paint them on the wrong side. And we have to start over on another one. But this particular one is 300 in the edition. And it's really a fun one because a lot of people love Walt. Let me show you a finished piece of it. We also created a background for this. That's what this one is. It's also printed, kind of a high quality print, and that goes behind the cell. And then you have your cell set up. Goes like that. And I'll show you one painted. This is our newest one in our collection. I'm going to show you a website at the end if you'd like. You can go online and see all the beautiful pieces that we do create in our ink and paint department. But this is our Walt and Mickey. See how he kind of just stands off the page? He just pops off of it because he's painted on a cell that's actually separated from the background. I'm going to turn it around so you can see the back. He looks kind of dull, doesn't he? That's because there's no detail lines on the back. We try to paint them really nice so they look good on the back as well, even though you don't see it. But it's kind of, a little pet peeve. We want to make sure that all Disney art is painted beautifully. So there it is right there. And that's one. And then we also, a more contemporary piece, a lot of times we take characters that are really popular, like the next one. is Scar and Goofy. Animal Kingdom is the setting. So we actually design the setting and say, okay, this is where we want this to be. And we kind of make a story out of it. They're kind of fighting over this piece of steak that's in the bowl. So it's a little humor, but we always try to have a story, just like you would in an animated film. It always starts with a good story. That particular one, the background on that one was painted by hand. So we create the backgrounds in different ways. That one I painted on illustration board, and I used photographs and reference from Animal Kingdom. So those of you who love the Tree of Life can look at that tree and say, I know where that piece is on that tree. We want you to have that experience to take home with you, because these are collector's pieces. And you come here for a vacation and you want a souvenir, you want something that you can take back and remember why you love Disney so much. And that's why we try to always work them towards the parks. We were exclusive to Hollywood Studios for a while, but now we're starting to do other parks. Okay, here we go. We create some with Magic Kingdom settings. We have a great Stitch one. I'll show you at the end, which you'll love that piece. The next one I want to talk about is cels and Serigraphs. And this is why I gave you the handout, because I know it's kind of hard to keep all these straight, but when you go out to purchase and want to collect a piece of art, you would want to be able to know which one you're getting. A Sericel is very interesting. It's a printing process only. There's no human hand that painted it or inked it, but it looks like it. They take a printing process, and they print the color, one color at a time, on the back of the cell. Like if an artist was sitting behind there painting it on the back. So you want to be really careful, because it can be deceiving. But most Sericels and Serigraphs are stamped. So you'll be able to see that it'll say Sericel, and you want to look at that really carefully. So if you're looking for a hand-painted cell, that is not the one that you would want. Sometimes they're sold with backgrounds, sometimes they aren't, which could also be misleading to make you think that it's a production cell. So look for that stamp that's embossed on the front of the cell. A serigraph cell, let's see, the bottom one here, the Lady and the Tramp cell, that one is a printing process as well, but a serigraph is not on a cell. It's on a piece of paper. So it's a high quality print, like a lithograph, that is printed one color at a time with the background, so it merges together. I mean, they're beautiful, and you would want to treat them the same way you would a cell, even as a paper copy. It's a great way to start to start your collecting. But sunlight could damage it as well, so if you hang these in your home, you want to make sure that they stay out of direct sunlight, because even lithographs and serigraphs could fade. Along with the Sericel. Any questions so far with any of the art cells? Yes?
If you have a limited edition of 300, how many different artists are producing those?
That's a very good question. We have 3 on our team here, and there is another team in California as well that started an ink and paint department. The question was, how do you know who painted what on the cell when you're collecting out of the 300? Well, what happens when you're doing limited edition? I may work on 10 in one day. They are not numbered. When they are very limited, which I'll talk to you about this one in a second, they are numbered. But limited editions in a collection of 300, I would work on 10 of them, and I would do the full cell. Like this one here, I'm going to paint the whole piece. Of course, I won't put this one in production because I'm not handling it very well without my gloves. This one, I would finish the whole piece. It would dry, I would clean it up and get it packaged and ready to go. So we really don't even know if mine versus my friend Sharon's was the first one we painted or the last one. There's no way to know that when you have an edition of, let's say, 300 or even 1,000. Because the orders come in, and of course we paint them at different times. Sometimes we start running low on inventory, and we have a really popular piece, and we try to go back to that piece and restock on that, which is kind of fun because then we get to revisit some of the pieces. Some of the characters are difficult to paint, so we don't get as many done as we do. This particular piece is it's not as detailed, so it takes about an hour, a little over an hour to paint just one. But we paint in production style, just like you would in a Disney animation film. We would paint on 10 in the scene at one time. So if you've ever seen an ink and paint desk, we have drying shelves on the top. And what those are for is to dry our cels. So I will take 10 cels and lay them out. I'll put all the black on one, all of them. Come back and put another color because the black's kind of dry. And I'll go in and put the red on his pants and go back to it again and put the yellow on his shoes until they're all done, and then I'll start another set. So it is a little repetitive with film animation with cels. It wasn't as much because you had the character was changing every time, but limited editions are basically. Did I answer that? Yeah. Now with limited editions that are hand inked and hand painted. So this is a different kind of limited edition. This one's one we did at Christmas of last year. And Mickey and Pluto and the sleigh, they're all hand inked. So if you get a chance to peek at that when we're through, it's a beautiful piece. And then, of course, I painted the background digitally. So it was a digitally painted background. But the characters were silkscreen on the front of the cel. You can tell it's a little larger, but it also is an edition of 25. So it's more sought after a lot of times. We would, and the first number means that 25 means that that was the 25th one that got painted. We actually can track them a little better than we could when they're not numbered. The second number in the fraction would be how many are in the edition. So that's number 2 of 25. So that's the difference between limited collecting pieces in an edition size of 300 or more, or a limited, I call them a limited, because they're very, that particular piece probably took 2 hours to ink. So you can see the time, this time we saved from moving from hand inking to digital inking, quite a bit of time. I've put in a few here for you to look at. These are some of our collections. Of course, we try to model them after some of the parks, different attractions in the park. So you can remember when I went to be our guest when it opened up. So we try to hit on one of those special occasions because we all go to the parks and we do things because a lot of times it's something special that we're celebrating, and we want you to be able to have not a souvenir, but a collectible piece that you can take home with you. There's the Stitch piece. I think you'd love that if you're a Stitch fan. He's causing havoc at the ride at Magic Kingdom. Of course, he's got toilet paper everywhere, which is really funny. That's so his character. And then, of course, we've got many there. That's called Jolly Afternoon. So basically, nothing can spoil us at the parks when it's raining. So we still move on. And here's a few more that we have. The Key to the Kingdom is the first one with Mickey and Pluto, and that one was actually we did that one for the 40th anniversary of the Magic Kingdom, celebrating their birthday. And we took those old e-tickets. I know you guys remember those old e-tickets, and we put it on the original background. And we digitally enhanced it. We put some characters in the background as well, riding some of the rides, which was a lot of fun. And so we tried to just make real exciting things for you to look at. We've got the Tower of Terror. We have the roller coaster, which I don't know if y'all have had a chance to ride, but it's a lot of fun. And that was actually one of my concepts. And it's really fun to do because if you notice, all the characters on the cels are basically full characters. In filmmaking, as well as limited edition cel making, the characters can't just be a half character. We would have to do in film called registration, and that's where if a character walks up to a table and he decides to sit down, and he's going to be there for a few frames or so, and being 24 per second, he's going to be there a little while. The animator's not going to want to draw all his bottom section over and over when you're not even going to see it. So what we do is we would register their body to the table, to where they're sitting, so it looks and appears like they're sitting at the table. And that's what we did with that one. We tried to do a registration on that one in the car. If you notice, they're all kind of chopped, kind of half off. So it wasn't working as well because these cels are not peg barred. That means that they aren't on a bar that keeps them in the same exact spot every time like they are in film. So we actually, that particular cell was real popular because you got the car with it. So we painted the characters in the car. So the car is part of the cell. So that was a fun one. And then, of course, Jessica Rabbit. That was a lot of fun. It was more of a contemporary look for the Hollywood studios, a little more streamlined on that one. And then this is our website. Please, if you get a chance to write it down, it's www.disneyparksmerchandise.com. And then look under the tab for Park Authentic. And you'll see our whole collection there. It's got a lot of different pieces of art. Some have retired. You won't see those. You'll say, well, whatever happened to that one? After so many years, we sell almost out of the edition. We actually retire them, and sometimes that's more valuable online when you're going to the secondary market to purchase them to finish out your collection. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
That one back with Minnie. Now, was that background, was that digitally painted as well, or was that actually photographed?
That is a very good question, and we, as I was saying earlier, we do a lot of different forms of backgrounds with our cels, and that one was a photograph. She wanted to know if that was a photograph. It started out a photograph, but they always, once they go scanning into the computer, we enhance them a little bit. Just like with Be Our Guest, that one also was a photograph of the front of the restaurant, but the angle was not right, so we actually tilted it so it would look better when the characters were standing in front of it. So yes, we do hand painting. Some of our artists have done watercolor with them. Just shakes it up a little bit, gives you some variety. So when they're on your wall, they're not so stagnant all around. They're just real exciting to look at. May I have any questions? Yes.
If you wanted to try this yourself, not painting Disney, but painting your own, can you buy acetates, that kind of film, or is it sort of a home use where it's not really going into production, but we make some of the techniques?
You can. There is a company called Cartoon Color. They sell cels that you can purchase. You can actually use a transparency. You know, everybody knows what a transparency is. But you take that one and use a marker and maybe a coloring book to get the image, a line image, and put it underneath it. And actually draw, I would try a rapidograph or a fine marker to get your color, get your line on the front of the cel. And then, but be sure and remember to flip it over and paint it on the back. Now the cel paint that we use is called cel vinyl, so it's a flexible paint. So you want to, I have used acrylic paint, regular acrylic paint on a cel. It will stay on it, but for long-term use it probably will not stay. It'll eventually crack. But, any other questions? All right. Well, the literature that you have, take that with you, and it'll give you the 3 forms of cels, so you'll remember that when you go looking. Yes? You have a... Oh, yes. They all are very susceptible to sunlight, so you want to make sure they stay out of direct sunlight. I mean, if they're in your living room but they don't get any direct sun, they will last a long time. But if they get a direct sun, you will certainly start seeing it fade, especially with the serigraph because it's on paper. A cel is, you're going to spend a little more, so you certainly don't want it to. I mean, I've heard a lot of people put them in their bathrooms and do different things with where the humidity. You want to be really careful because eventually over time you'll start losing the paint will start to break away from the cel material. Okay. Also, I gave you a pen. If you saw that, I hope you liked that. It's one of our collector pens from a piece that actually was retired. It's an ink and paint pen. It is not a trading pen, so I wouldn't recommend trading it. I would hang on to it. But I hope you enjoy it. And please come and join us for the workshops. You can have an opportunity to paint a cel. We're going to have it all laid out. We've created a cel just for this event. And then you would take home with you, so it would be a souvenir for you. Thank you.